So I want to thank everyone for joining this session today. My name is Felicia Campbell. I'm a marketing manager for the COSTARS program. We also have with us Ray Laurent. He is with us as our chat moderator today. And if you've called into the COSTARS toll-free line in the past, chances are that Ray is the person you've spoken to. He fields most of the questions about the sodium chloride contract, so he'll be a great asset for us today in this presentation. Because you're joining us today, you likely have questions about the sodium chloride program. This contract is the most used contract by our membership. It's also the contract that generates the most calls from our members. So we've also heard, as we've attended various events this year, that our members have experienced a significant change in roles over the last year or two. So we thought it'd be a really good idea to create a webinar to help you navigate the sodium chloride contract. We have a lot of information to share with you today, and it's going to be in 3 different sections. In the first section, we'll take a deep dive in the sodium chloride program, including discussing deadlines, terms and conditions of the program, and member best practices. We'll talk about your member's profile or your member profile's importance and how it can affect your participation in the bulk road salt program. And then also we'll show you the COSTARS Training Center, where I'm going to share a very helpful tip with you. Because we get this question a lot as members fill out their sodium chloride agreements, I wanted to expand on some of the definitions within this contract before we started really getting into the meat of our presentation today. When we talk about initial tons, what we're referring to are the tons that you agree to purchase between August 1st and October 31st. Winter tons are the tons that you agree to purchase between November 1st and July 31st. And then obviously the total tons would be the sum of the initial tons and the winter tons from your sodium chloride agreement. When we talk about the 60% minimum requirement, we're actually calculating that on the total tonnage of your salt agreement. So if your stockpile doesn't allow you to purchase all of the initial tons that you entered on your salt agreement by that October 31st deadline, that's okay. Just make sure that by the end of July, you've ordered enough tonnage to meet that 60% minimum. We don't really track that you've met your agreement quantities of those initial tons. We only really are focusing on that total tonnage. The road salt program is voluntary, so every member who wants to participate must elect into the program each year. There are specific deadlines that members must follow within the program to ensure that they're adhering to the terms and conditions of their participation in this program. So let's navigate through the timeline of activities happening during the road salt contract season so that you can kind of see the roadmap of what this contract entails. On approximately January 4th, we send out an email to our members to let them know the deadline to submit salt agreements for the next year's contract. Those salt agreement submissions are always due March 15th. Between April and July, we have the salt contract out for bid for the next year to the suppliers. In August, the new contract is announced and then posted to the news flash section in the members area homepage. And I'm going to actually show you where to find that in a few slides. I do want to note here that August is our expectation of the drop date for the new contract. Sometimes it's delayed. There's a very significant approval process that the new contract needs to go through. So it does get delayed now and then. We always send you an email that tells you when the contract is available, and you'll always know by looking in this news flash area that I'll show you in a little bit. I just kind of want to give you that little caveat there. Between August 1st, or when the contract is officially announced, and October 31st, members can purchase their initial tons from the supplier who has awarded their county from the new contract. November 1st is a really good time to do what we recommend as a yearly member profile checkup. This profile is our only resource to make sure that important information is getting to the right contacts. So you don't want to miss that email alert for the next year's SALT agreement deadline. And we'll talk more about your profile later on in the presentation. Between November 1st and July 31st, members can purchase their winter tons from the supplier awarded their county from the new contract. And between December and February, members should analyze their salt submission quantities from previous years, noting what their actual usage was to strategize salt needs for the next year. And we're going to talk about strategy quite a bit in a little while. And then by July 31st, you need to ensure that you've met your 60% minimum order requirement. And the reason you want to do this is for members who've not met that 60% minimum order requirement by July 31st, their suppliers can begin to charge salt storage fees for any tonnage over that 60%. And we all need to manage our budgets as closely as we possibly can and not incur additional charges we didn't expect. There are 3 resources within the bulk road salt program that you'll want to keep in your files each year for 2 reasons. The first reason is this will ensure that you're audit ready for liquid fuel funds. And the second is these items will help you in budgeting and decision-making processes in the next year. The agreement confirmation and the contract are provided through the program as you are working through the program. The tracking sheet is something that you should keep as a tool for yourself. And I'm going to show you an example of a tracking sheet that I created in a little bit, and we'll go through that to see if that would be helpful for you in your processes using this contract. But before we go over that, I want to talk to you about the 2 most common questions that our team receives about the sodium chloride program. The first is the new contract available? And the second is, can you send me the current contract? Salt contracts are always available to our members, and I'm going to show you how to locate them. First, you'll visit www.dgs.pa.gov/COSTARS. Once you're on that page, you'll select member information. That's a blue button. And then on the next page, you'll select the blue button called members area. You'll then see the members area where you can update your member profile, search contracts, and view important information in the newsflash area. You do not need to be signed in to search contracts or view the newsflash information. So the current contract is always posted in the current news area of Newsflash, and you see where it's located there with that yellow area or arrow. So this is a place you can always look to see if the new contract is available if you're afraid that you've missed the email announcement that we always send with the contract attached to it. So let's open up the sodium chloride contract and take a look to see what important information is included. The first page of the contract defines the contract number, the dates of that contract season, eligibility requirements, ordering requirements, and record-keeping recommendations. Moving on to page 2, this one is going to be a key piece of information in the contract for you. This defines which supplier was awarded your county for that contract season and also tells you the price per ton for your county. Page 3 is a typical contract overview that you would see in any statewide contract that you may be using for COSTARS purchases. Page 4 is the second key page for you. Once you've identified the supplier who's been awarded your county, you'll find their contact information for ordering on this 4th page. You may purchase under this contract only from the supplier who's been awarded your county for that contract season. So the first thing that you should do prior to ordering is consult that map to identify your supplier. The reason I say that is we've had instances of members purchasing from the wrong supplier because they've had the same supplier for the last 5 years and didn't realize their county was now awarded to a different supplier. This can cause issues for members. If you purchase your 60% minimum according to the season's agreement from the wrong supplier, the supplier who was actually awarded your county can charge the storage fees for the entire 60% minimum from your agreement because you've not actually fulfilled the terms and conditions of the contract. And the next few pages are a list recap of which counties each of the awarded suppliers are responsible for. You can see on these pages the pricing per county, and there is another piece of information on here which you haven't seen in the document so far. You'll see the cumulative estimated quantities that the suppliers expect to fulfill based on the salt agreements that the members submitted by that March 15th deadline. This agreement deadline is in place for a reason. The suppliers strategically bid on different counties using criteria including where their mines and distribution centers are located and what the total quantity that they are confident they can fulfill during the contract season. The last point is the main reason why an awarded supplier might actually deny a late member agreement after that March 15th deadline. They don't want to overreach their delivery comfort level and affect service to the members on the original agreement list. This is very important that members meet that March 15th deadline. We actually have already had a supplier or two say they cannot take any new members for members who have submitted some late contract agreements. The remaining pages of the contract are listing by county, showing all of the COSTARS members who have completed an agreement for the contract season by the deadline date. This listing shows all the quantities that they've entered on their agreement. So once you receive each new season's contract, I recommend that you find your organization on this list if you think that you've registered already to participate in the contract for that season. If you don't find your organization on the list, contact us immediately. We'll work with you to determine if there maybe was an issue with your agreement registration, or if it's just, technically a late request, then we'll work with you to see if the supplier will accept a late agreement from your organization. This list generates directly from the system that you use to register for participation in the new contract season. So if you're not on the list, there's a high probability that either you didn't submit an agreement at all, or you didn't properly complete the submission process. If you have a submission confirmation in your files for the season in question, then you should find your organization in this list. If you have any questions, feel free to call us and we will help work through the issue with you. So as you remember from our audit ready funnel slide, we recommended that you maintain a tracking spreadsheet of information. So previously, we've not created a resource like this for our members because the kind of data our members might want to track may not all be the same, and also members like to view data differently. However, for this presentation, I created an example of how I would track if I were in your shoes and the administrator of the SALT contract for my organization. I will show you some of the information I may gather, what I'm actually learning from that data, how it might affect my future predictions, and then other data that you might want to add to your tracking sheet if you wanted to use this. Before we dive into this tracker, I do want to let you know that I'm going to include this tracker in the post-webinar email that we send out to you. So if you don't currently have a tracking sheet in place, feel free to use this as your starting point and you can modify it to fit your needs and visual preferences. At least it gives you a jumping off point. So let's look at this tracker and talk about how it might help. So each season, I would change the dates throughout the sheet. So I'm going to give you some visuals here. So I would change this to the 2022-2023 sodium chloride contract tracking, and then all of the other dates, including the months of purchase, would then need to be adjusted by a year. And then I would also change the price per ton and my awarded supplier if that supplier is different. The contract pricing most certainly would be different. And then I would also modify my agreement quantities if they've changed from the previous season's contract agreement. And then the last thing I would do is I'd clear out the ordering data from the previous year. So as you can see, I was tracking my orders last year. I tracked the dates and I tracked the amount that I ordered. The items that you see in yellow are all formulas, so they're going to correct themselves as you manipulate the other cells for the new contract. So now you'll see that we have a fresh tracker to start our new contract season. So this would be for the 2022-2023 season. And you can see here that my awarded supplier has not changed for this new year, but my price per ton did. So I made those corrections. So I want to jump back to the 2021-2022 data again, and we're going to talk about what we see and how I would use that if I were the administrator for my organization. So looking at last year's sheet again, you can see that I have no orders since February, and my tonnage ordered on the 2021-22 contract totaled 1,000 tons. So my 60% minimum in the top section of 720 tons actually met my 60% minimum. I had initially said in my agreement I was going to order 1,200 tons. I actually ordered 1,000, so I met that 60% minimum of 720 tons already. So no storage fees will be applied for this contract. On the right-hand side, I split the months into the initial ordering period and the winter ordering periods just to see how I matched up with the agreement quantities that I had entered in my agreement for that year. So as you can see, I've ordered in the initial fill half of what I agreed to. So I had agreed to 500 tons, but I only ordered 250 tons. In the winter fill time frame, I actually ordered I ordered 50 tons more than I initially had agreed to. I can see with this, especially if I have a number of years to compare, I can really see a trend and then really hone in on that sweet spot of where I consistently meet my 60% minimum, yet feel comfortable that with that 140% maximum understanding, I'll have enough salt to get me through even a rough winter. So then let's look at the new season's contract agreement again. This time I've decided to rework my agreement quantities based on what I saw from last year. Because I agreed to 500 tons in the initial fill last year, but only ordered half of that, I decided to drop my initial fill quantity down to 300 tons. And in the last contract, I had agreed to order 700 tons in the winter, but I actually purchased 750 tons. In case we have more winter events in the next year, I decided to increase those winter tons to 900 for the new year. Because of my adjustments, my total still remains at 1,200, just like last year. And I feel comfortable with meeting the 60% again with the new contract since I actually met 83.3% of my total agreed tonnage last year. So I feel really comfortable that I have a lot of wiggle room in there. So now you can see how helpful this kind of tracking can be in your strategy. During the mid-spring timeframe each year, participants often receive notices from us that they should check that they've reached their 60% minimum so that they have time to place orders by July 31st to avoid storage fees. After that notice is sent, we often receive phone calls from our members and they're asking if they've met their 60% yet. Remember, your orders are placed through the suppliers directly, not through the COSTARS staff. So we have no purchasing data for our individual members. We always need to direct the member to reach out to the supplier for this information. But by using a tracking sheet like this, you're always dialed into where you stand on meeting the 60% minimum. If this tracking sheet was a real resource that I plan to use throughout the year, I'd add some following data on the sheet that might actually help me even more. I'd save the contract from the newsflash area to my computer, and then I'd add a link to this tracker in case I needed to view that contract document while working in the spreadsheet. I'd also add a section on that spreadsheet with the ordering contact information for the supplier who has awarded my contract. By adding those two pieces on that tracker, I'd have access to everything salt related right at my fingertips in one location. And like I said, I was going to send this tracker to you after this event within the next couple of days. I did add a section to the bottom of the tracker that I think it says important information. And I've added a section that says current contract or something with a note to you that says link contract here. So I've given you some direction of the kinds of things that I'm talking about right now to help you remember to do those things if that's helpful for you. Some other things you might want to think about tracking, which will not be on the tracking sheet that I send to you, but might be things in your modifications that'll help you as you move forward. You might want to think about adding cost tracking data, adding costs for each individual salt order and keeping a running total of those costs. This type of data will help you in your future budgeting by allowing you to project a ballpark percentage increase year over year. It may also help you determine if you want to do a spring or early summer order prior to the end of a current contract to fill your stockpile. And then that way you might be able to relieve yourself of having to pay more in the next year. You can get that better pricing for an order early to fill your stockpile. You may also want to track some usage data. What you see on this tracker is only what you've agreed to order and what you're ordering. But how do these numbers really track with what you're actually using? So this might be helpful to tweak your agreements in the future. So now that we've talked about preparing ourselves for the quantities, we want to enter into our salt agreement for the upcoming season. So let's briefly go over the submission process. I'm sure we have some of the guests with us today who've never been through this process before, so I wanted to cover this part as well. The SALT agreements are completed electronically in the members area where you can find the current SALT contract and search contract. So I've created the link at the top of this slide so you know the map on how to get to this page again. Only between the beginning of January through March 15th will you see the orange bar at the top of the members area that will link you to a SALT request submission. You'll click on that link. And if you're not already logged into the system, it'll take you to the login screen. Enter your credentials. And then because you've already clicked on that orange bar, it knows where you want to go after you've logged in. So it'll take you right to the SALT request. So I'm going to show you this process over a couple of slides, but when you're actually filling out the form, it's on one page. All you'll need to do is scroll down to complete it. It's just too much for one presentation slide. So I think that this area is actually mistitled. This is not a SALT request like a SALT order. This is actually to register for participation in the contract season and submit your quantity agreement for the new contract season. I just wanted to point that out because every time I see that title, I'm like, that just doesn't sound right to me. So what you're looking at here at the top, you'll see a recap of your organization, the SALT contract year, and as you can see here, it says that I've already submitted agreement for the 2022-2023 year. When you're registering for a new season, the screen will say not submitted, and I believe that will be in red. So let's pretend that it's not a submitted form yet, and we're going to go through the agreement details. If you're filling out a new registration for the next contract season, the system automatically fills in the same data from your previous SALT registration, and you'll see what I mean as we go through this. If you're so as you can see here at the top, I'm listing myself here as the representative of the organization that's filling out the legally binding agreement. That's already pre-populated because I was the same one that did it for 2021. Make sure as you're going through this entire form that you're correcting any outdated information as you move through the agreement. To see the agreement details, you'll want to click on the plus or minus sign to expand or collapse the window. So it will be a plus sign when you first see it, and then when you want to collapse it, it'll show up as a minus. So you'll scroll down the page to see the next set of information, and we ask for 2 addresses and contact information. On the left-hand side, we're asking for billing details. This is who and where should the awarded supplier send the SALT order invoices to. On the right-hand side, we want to know where the SALT is to be delivered and who is the on-site contact at the delivery address. This is all going to pre-populate based on your previous submission. And then now we focus on the quantities that you agree to. So you first want to define your stockpile capacity. This is how much can your stockpile hold at any given time totally. When you, then you'll want to identify the many tons that you'll need during the initial ordering window and the winter ordering window. Remember that the definitions that we talked about? Well, under that initial ordering window, it does kind of give you a little helpful definition of the time frame of that. When you're filling this out, even if you don't intend to order any SALT during the initial time frame, you'll need to put a 0 in there. It always needs some sort of a number in there. So either put the tonnage that you are agreeing to or a 0 in that section. Fill out the same for the winter tons, and then the system will actually auto-populate your total tons. Below where you're inputting numbers for the current or the new season, you'll see your old season tonnage listed there as well. As you can see, I didn't actually put any tons in there, so it's not listing any numbers, but that's where you're going to see what you had ordered last or had agreed to last year. It's just sort of a helpful piece of information so you can see that you're not over agreeing or under agreeing based on last year. So next, you're going to go to the signature details, and again, you'll want to hit that plus or minus sign to expand. You will check the acknowledgement box. You're saying that you're signing you're agreeing to these conditions, and then type the name and title as the person submitting the agreement. If you're filling out the document for your boss or roadmaster, you're going to want to click on the on behalf of box So at the top of the page where you fill out a name under the intending to be legally bound verbiage, you'll use your boss or roadmaster's name if you are using the on behalf of. So the person actually filling out the agreement is signing it in the signature details. If you're doing it for your boss's name is at the very top, and you'll click the on behalf of box here. And we use the on behalf of as well. Sometimes after an agreement is done, we might get a call from a member who says, I need to adjust my numbers, and this is before March 15th. We can go in and make those adjustments. We'll then click on behalf of, and then we will send the receipt email back out to the member so they have the new adjustments. Speaking of the sending the receipt email, you'll see 3 buttons at the bottom: save, send receipt, and print receipt letter. You won't see these during your submission process. You'll select a button called submit. Because the window isn't open right now to sign a SALT agreement, my screenshots that I'm using here are from the administrative side of our system. So I have these 3 action boxes here that you won't see. Yours will say submitted. Once you submit your order, back at the top of the page where I told you that I had already submitted, so it says submitted, yours will then say submitted there. Oh, and actually, I can show you that. I forgot I put that little screen in there. So now yours will say submitted. So let's talk about some of the terms and conditions for the sodium chloride contract. First and foremost, SALT agreements are not an estimate. You are projecting what you want to order, but by signing this form, you are actually agreeing to those numbers, and that's where your 60% minimum, 140% maximum are then calculated off of. Members not meeting the 60% minimum order requirement prior to July 31st may be charged fees for the shortfall by the supplier. And the suppliers have agreed to provide up to 140% of the tonnage requirements at that contracted price. A minimum delivery is 22 tons, which equals a truckload. So make sure as you are in need of salt that you need at least 22 tons in one delivery. The contract permits the following for salt delivery timeframes. In the initial fill period, a supplier has 30 days to deliver from the time of order placement. And then during the winter fill, they have 5 to 7 days to deliver once the order is placed. And the members are to place their orders directly with the awarded supplier, not through the COSTARS team. I want to talk about some of the best practices, and some of these you've already heard, but I wanted to kind of give you a list of best practices. First and foremost, maintain your current contact information in your member profile, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in detail momentarily. You'll want to submit your registration for the new road salt season by March 15th. You want to maintain your current and historical road salt tracking data. Again, that's where that tracking sheet comes in. Strategize your agreement quantities to meet that minimum and maximum requirement per the terms and conditions of the contract. Be aware of what your stockpile capacity is and what your current fill amount is so that you can use that in your strategy. Do I want to get another order before the end of the season, or can I not fit another 22 tons in there? Confirm that you've met the 60% minimum purchase by July 31st to avoid those storage fee charges. Lower your expenses by refilling from the current contract by July 31st. This year we sent an email out, I want to say late spring, early summer, letting our members know that we were expecting price increases on salt for the new contract. So if they can possibly fit any more in their stockpile, they might want to place an order before the end of the last contract period. You may want to start assessing that yourself and not waiting for us to give that kind of direction. And then contact DGS immediately. If you're having any ordering or delivery issues, let us know. We have constant contact with our suppliers on this contract. We are always having conversations with them. If you're having any issues, there is a possibility that another member is having the same issues. The more information that we can provide during those conversations with our suppliers, the more they can assess, is this a one-off issue that we've had with one member, or is this a systemic issue that we need to address a bigger problem than just what we're seeing by this one or two members. So always keep in contact with us with any issues. The more information that you can provide to us, the better as well. Order date, delivery date, how long it's been if you haven't had it delivered yet. If you have quality issues with the salt, send us pictures. Give us as much information as you possibly can, and don't wait. Remember when we looked at the contract and the cumulative estimates listed by the awarded supplier by the county? I mentioned these totals by county are one of the criteria that the suppliers use to decide if they want to bid on a county. Their total potential bid award must be of the quantity of salt that they are sure they can deliver. Suppliers don't want to risk their customer service and delivery success by biting off more than they can chew. They often agree to accept late agreements, but there is no guarantee that they will do that. If a supplier denies a late agreement, DGS cannot intervene on the decision since a late agreement does not follow the member requirements of participation in the contract. One of the most important factors in our members meeting the March 15th deadline is receiving the email reminder to submit the agreement by March 15th. And again, we send those out in early January. So this leads me into my next topic, your member profile and how important it is. I'm going to take a quick drink. So a COSTARS members profile is of utmost importance to our members and the COSTARS team overall. Remember, I said earlier that this is the only resource that we have to ensure that our members receive important updates like the road salt deadlines and announcements. It is a member's responsibility to regularly update their organization's profile to ensure that the information is current. So like I said earlier, we recommend a yearly checkup. And November 1st is a really good time to do that so that you have that done before that January timeframe when we send out the announcement for submissions. So I quickly want to go through a couple of these things. In the top section is the registration details. This is about your organization itself. If in the address area you have a post office box, please use the physical address of your organization. And the reason is on the right-hand side, the system automatically populates with your legislative information and it doesn't work with PO boxes. We are almost never going to send you hard copy mail. So really the post office box information isn't providing any real helpful information for COSTARS and what we need it for and how it's used in the system. If you were, or not if, when you are populating the email address section in your organization's area, we do say a best practice is using an email address that's maybe a shared account monitored by a group of people rather than just one. And the reason this is a best practice is as roles change in your organization, this resource account will likely not change. Only thing that may change in that are the people responsible for the account. If you don't have access to a resource account like this, that's okay. Just make sure that the person receiving the email knows who in the organization needs to receive the COSTARS information being received. So if it's salt related, make sure that that person should know that that should go to your roadmaster. Then in the section below where you're indicating your contacts and your primary contact, make sure that each of your contacts are listed as associated within the member profile. And I'm going to show you how to update your profile and create that association and explain that in a few minutes here. We do recommend that your contacts in this area include your roadmaster and anybody else who affects your salt administration. That is very important that they're receiving the information. So let's talk about how to update your member profile. You'll visit www.dgs.pa.gov/COSTARS and select members information. And then select members area, which will take you back to this screen, which now we've seen, I think this is our third time looking at it. This is where you will search contracts, find your sodium chloride contract in there. On the left-hand side, you'll select COSTARS registration login. because you will need to log in. So if you're already registered, use your user ID and password. If for some reason your credentials no longer work, if you haven't logged into the system for quite some time, select new user registration, and this will take you to the Keystone login site where you'll set up new credentials, and then come back to this Keystone, or I'm sorry, come back to this login screen and use those new credentials to log in. We do recommend that every contact in your organization that is listed in your member profile holds their own credentials via Keystone login. And the reason we recommend that is as you have staff turnover or roles in your departments change, you don't have to be concerned that you no longer know your username and password. You each hold your own, so people can leave and come in and you're all still able to access your account here. So once you're logged in, this will be the homepage here that you'll be directed to. You will, at that top drop-down area, select that, and you should see your member account in that drop-down list. And then you'll just select Update Membership Details. That'll take you to your profile, and then you'll make updates as needed. If you don't see your membership in that drop-down area, that means that you are not associated with your account. And what that means really is the system knows you have a key to the front door and can let you in, but it doesn't know where you belong once you're inside. So that's what we're doing when we associate your credentials with your member profile. So we'll do that in the second section. You'll either start typing your organization's name, or if you know your member ID, type that in there and a pop-up box will show up, and then you'll select your organization from that list that actually met the criteria of what you started typing. Then you will check this box under step number 3, which says that you are authorized to represent your organization, and then you'll submit your association request. Now at the top drop-down box, you should find your organization and be able to update your membership details there. If for some reason your organization is not a COSTARS member yet and you're on our call today, just select New COSTARS Membership at the bottom, and that will give you the registration form, and in about a day or two you'll hear from us with your member ID, or we'll ask you for more information to help us verify that you meet eligibility requirements for membership. Now, I want to talk to you about our training area. Again, if you go to the COSTARS webpage, and the link is listed above so you know how to get there. On the right-hand side, you'll see a section called COSTARS Process Online Trainings. This is our training center. The very top part is for members, and the bottom section is for suppliers. If you have any suppliers that you would like to work with through COSTARS and are not COSTARS authorized suppliers yet, send them to this training area. There's a wealth of resources there to help them get started on becoming COSTARS authorized. But I do want to talk to you about the members training area. At the very top of this webpage, there are some instructions, but I know a lot of people don't read them, and it gives you a really awesome tip on something. So I wanted to point that out to you. So if you look at this top section of member trainings, the several links that you see there, those are all step-by-step training modules that will walk you through an individual process within COSTARS. That is a good section if there's one thing that you don't know how to do. That's a really good area to look. And I'm going to show you a tip on that in a second, but I do want to talk to you about the webinar recordings as well. The very last link there are the webinar recordings. If you have a new staff member, the very first webinar will give them a good in-depth overview of the COSTARS program and also show them how to search contracts. There's a demo on there, so that's a good training resource for you. But then let's go back to, let's say we were going to look at that training module for updating your member registration or a member association request. So once you open up like updating your COSTARS member profile, you'll see it opens up to something called the cue card version, and I find this really difficult to visualize. I don't like working in this. In the top right-hand corner, you actually have choices of how you want to view this training module, My favorite is called the simulation. And once you're in the simulation, the first one I think is the fastest view. You have two choices within simulation. It's the quicker one is the first one. So just click on that. That'll open and it's as if somebody's sitting at your desk walking you through it, and it's much more pleasant visually. So that was just a little tip I wanted to share with you. I don't think a lot of people know about that. So I wanted to just share with you our COSTARS contact information. Feel free to contact us if you have any questions, but I'm also going to open the floor for any questions that you might have right now. But again, don't hesitate to give us a call or send us an email if you have any future questions.